never even seen the real spiritual plane before, right? So in conclusion, I want to also say that the deep level of knowledge here is that everything is really about your foundation. You have to have the courage to go back in if you need to rework your foundation and get on something solid. And the reason is because obviously when you even grow up in dogmas or you have things happen to you when you're younger, you base everything that you're experiencing on the world from those dogmas. So everything goes into that, like I said, angel or devil category when you have a heavy Christian religion programming sitting under the layer of your metaphysics. You see what I mean? And then so sometimes you got to go back and watch your consciousness and watch your mind and see how much of that residue is still left that is allowing you to go on with certain absurdities that is short-circuiting your very energy. In order to have access to the complete cosmos, you must have a pass. The way that you get a pass through the cosmos is that you actually will help all of the children. You don't care what color they are, any of that, that you will help the children as if they're your own. Because see, what a bad judge does is we got bad judges in the world. They judge the children and like they're not theirs. Like they'll give a young cat 20 years, but he'll never give his son 20 years. So he's not treating that child like it's his child. Because he'd be like trying to rehabilitate his son and all that kind of stuff. So see, our hard north is always to let us know that we are basically upholding the children for real. And we don't care what color those children are. Because every being coming into this space is to be given the proper opportunity to travel, to not only explore, meaning to go out into the reality and to be mentored by the reality, but also to go into that, into the internal. The internal and to be able to, as we call it, the innerverse, and to be able to explore themselves within. So now, we kind of we're reaching that peak point. So what are we going to taper off into?
Man, listen, Sevan, man, I'm going to close it out. I want to thank you. I want to get you back on here in January though, my brother. Yes. We talked about January, and I know you want to, as far as the ads, and you got amazing stuff going on. But I want to get you back on here in January, and we could take some Q&A from the people, and as well as continue to build. But man, this was legendary tonight, my brother.
Man, that would be lovely. Like we could just make, that next engagement just for the people. We come right in, because we could go anywhere with this. But I trust that, that what was transmitted today, not only was pleasing to the soul, that lets us understand that there's other passageways, that to ourselves to clear certain things up, like to really, again, see this organism and how it all is us, even the planet that we on. So, to also realize that, even bad neighborhoods are dirty ley lines, right? And you can, if you knew how to work the ley lines inside of your own body, which were the nadis, and clear them up, you can go right into a neighborhood and clear up the neighborhood on a level of geo-energetics, meaning that you know how to put certain things in the neighborhood that shift and open up the energy, like you're doing acupuncture or acupressure in the neighborhood, right? But see, what happens again is the reason why this sanctum is generally closed is if a person actually does have some hatred in their heart. And that's why when you see the mother, what the mother does is the mother will help a sick child.
She'll help anybody.
Without even thinking about getting sick.
Father be like, what the hell you doing?
Exactly. Father be like, yo, I'm going to be over here because I got to go to work tomorrow and I can't get sick. You see what I mean? But mother be there. And so in that embodiment of just being in it, like, look, I don't know what happened to your skin, but I'm in it with you. You see what I mean? It's just like really sojourning, because I do know that in many ways, again, we're sharing something, but somebody is trying to cure themselves consistently off of somebody else. And that's what's become the predatory nature in the reality, right? Is because it's like a relationship. I'll close down with this. Imagine a relationship where two people both need the same thing, but neither one of them can provide it. And they keep trying to get it from each other. You see what I mean? And then so this creates like a friction. And this is what be happening is that if you can't get the cycle of caring and love going on and get the whole motor rolling again, that thing actually does really dry out, but it hits another direction. It doesn't end. It starts going into regret. It starts going into bitterness. This is the shed. You see what I mean? And that's why they call that God. The God of the Old Testament is named Shaddai. He's a shed. He's even got pictures and shit. And it's just like the antithesis side. And that's what I wanted to finish off talking about the ancestors. The ancestors knew that there was like that's why they called it pantheism, because it was all of the movements of the sun. So they saw that when the sun went down and beneath the world, that it was going in the netherworld, that you needed to see the soul like that. And when the sun took on its netherworld clothing, it became Set. Sunset.
Sunset. Whew.
Okay. And then when Set ruled the night, and Set was built to rule the night. So, because the night was like a different thing. It's just like the night didn't, it was like they wasn't sweet. It wasn't nothing sweet down there. And that's what I was saying. It's like, it's a different level of how things are functioning. And when you talk about like when we've graduated so far in our consciousness, and we've already gone, we come forth by day. So we already went through that experience. And it's like now somebody's trying to put us back into that darkness. And it's like, that's why we got to keep shining on this, man. And we got to shine so much that it actually does really affect, because, you know, stars transfer information. It starts affecting those that are around us, and we're just sending that harmonic to them. And then when that happens, what their body would be doing is their body is responding. So it's like when you're around the body, when you're around another person, first of all, what happens with frequencies is the strongest frequency wins. We can see this in audio, video. You know, you do music, so you can watch how frequencies will dominate another frequency. So healers, what they come in with is this balanced frequency that is so strong, they don't really have to say anything. That's why I say the greatest teachers don't need to tell everybody anything when they're teaching somebody, because they know they become top, but they don't enter into that teaching sanctum, because it's like an energy that is around that person. And so, yeah, let us be more grateful in the life that we can even have these energies. At the end of the day, one of the things that I was noticing is when I do get a chance to sit down and breathe and feel my body and feel my connection with myself, and it feels so good, I just even sit in that moment and be like, man, it's crazy that you can even do this. And I want to make everybody know that, or let's make sure that everybody knows that precious gift that you can have when you sit with yourself and you get really calm and you start taking some breaths, especially if you know whole body breathing. And you start feeling good, and you start feeling that energy coming up and that Kundalini moving through the body. Remember, everybody can't do that. It's an extremely powerful gift to be able to feel good, right? So, you know, let's give thanks.
Hey, Sevan, do you have a Cash App? They're asking if you have a Cash App.
I don't, man. I haven't been on any of these new systems. Like, I got a little bit with Bitcoin. Everybody, if you want to assist anything with Secret Energy, because we're always deploying stuff, you could go to the site. And we got input, output, meaning, so if you don't have anything, we got you. Like, we really do have a way to put you on the fast track. And that's why I'm inventing stuff, because I'm able to put it into the affiliation, and then you're able to just send a link to it. And you don't got to even send a link to the things that are on the site. You can just send a link to knowledge or information that is on the site. So we created basically a system where when you're sharing this knowledge, if somebody comes to the website and then they make a transaction because they were looking at that knowledge, you should get some money for that, because you were responsible for them coming to the site. And so that's how the site is designed. It's designed for us all to create something and to be able to sustain ourselves. And we got something new coming. You can find it at dreamengine.ai. And it's a whole different level. It's going to bring value into every single thing that you're doing. So just like you were saying, yo, shoot me them thumbnails. Even that, like from even restylizing just you. I feel like that what happens for us is that we seldom see ourselves stylized as the hero. You see what I mean? And so there is a part of us, you know, some people are like, oh, that's egotistical, but there's a part of you that you have an aesthetic. This is the thing that I wanted to finish off with here. You have an aesthetic, you have a pattern. And this is why in ancient times, every tribe had a special pattern, right? You remember that, right? Everybody got a pattern, right? And so when you're born, they give you this pattern. It's not just a name, they give you a pattern, because this is your aesthetic. And generally, this is like an easy way for you to always go home. Because as an explorer, you leave from somewhere. You're not always out. You got a home. And so to get back to your home, you know your pattern, so you know your direction home. And so what I find is that we should explore art more, because there's times, and it's already been happening to me, where I'll see a certain image, and it will remind me of where I am and where I'm from. And it's like, it's a different way of looking. It's the same thing we were talking about with geometry. It's like it triggers something that's coming from the inside out rather than the outside in, something that you didn't have to like learn with knowledge. And now you recognize it, but something that you always knew that you haven't seen in a long time. And that's the beauty of, again, where we're at now and what we're doing now, going to be doing in January in Dream Engine, is that we're able to realize a different reality for ourselves for real. So that way, when you start to even, because English is, you know, I downplay it a little bit today because it can get quite wicked. But the reality is that it is also a very powerful language. So when you know how to describe certain things like hyper ornate, you know, words that we often don't really use, when we don't have words to really describe what we really want to receive in life, we don't have necessarily the energies or the characters to actually allow us to receive it. So I found that text to image is in itself also very educational in letting us realize why the way that we form our words together don't exactly end up equaling the manifestations that we're looking for, and how to actually get those words that do allow you to manifest what you're looking for, and then even more importantly, allow you to see a picture of it. Because once you get a picture of it, you can see if that's really, is that really where I'm at? And this takes just only a little bit of time. And so this is the kind of stuff that Dream Engine does. And I'm super excited to get into that, because I can't say after 14 years of just all out occult knowledge, you know, I am ready to do something that also is going to be equally as appealing for especially the children, you know, like illustration, creating like books and movies and things like that. So that, because we write the story for them.
Indeed.
You know what I mean? So, you know, do your best, be creative. So thank you so much, Rich. I also wanted to say, you know, it's been real, like, as I said earlier in building with you, and you also mentioned that, you know, it's been years for us, like over a decade. And, you know, watching our own growth, like, you know, I remember the beginning. I remember you was like I used to, you remember on Sesame Street where they had the lady with the socks and you never see her face? He's like, yo, you never see the lady's face, right? You was like, it's like, who is that behind the guy right like, go? And I always felt that was so honorable. You see what I mean? Because it wasn't even that's like the first sign of it. And that's why I say, for me, when I decide initially that a person is on the level, they're always on the level with me. I never change it, because I never know what reality I may end up in. Maybe a day they do something crazy. And I mean, like, but if I've already agreed, I'm like, that person's on the level. So I just want to, you know, thank you for always holding the space and giving the opportunity for so many powerful brothers to come through. You know, Billy and Rod and Be Serious. And, you know, this is, you know, these are very powerful, enlightened brothers. You know, Strayhorn, all of these beings are in themselves unique keys that unlock very special doors. And so that's the other thing that I know that we have to be aware of in this whole field of consciousness, is that it's not that we're disagreeing at all. We're actually servicing the being that is on that dimension that only believes that. And technically, you really want to get to a point where it's like that's why I say I don't want to teach second grade all my whole life, because I will start adapting the mindset of a second grader. So I want to level up too. And in order for me to do that, I need to know how to get unstuck. Right. Indeed. And so that means that I can't really hold to anything that somebody says that I am or what I'm supposed to be. I need to look at the whole picture and be like, okay, now I see the bigger thing. And so, yeah, I hope I can share that with everybody. Wholeness.
Indeed. You know, I appreciate the way you ended the live, you know, when you talked about the English language and certain things and pictures resonating with us. One of the things, just to say this real quick, as far as the English language, one of the letters that just send me somewhere in my mind to some type of ancient memory, when I see XYZ, there's something about the letters X, Y, and Z. Something about the last three letters of the alphabet, they send me somewhere ancient where I could just write Z on a piece of paper and zone out and look at Z, or write X, zone out, or write Y and zone out. Those three letters allow me to really zone out and just tap into something cosmic. So I definitely feel what you're saying, my brother. I thank you once again. I thank everybody for tuning in.
I look forward to the days that we're able to open up the sanctums, have this knowledge like itemized with pictures.
Oh, yeah.
Got folks coming in at level 1 rather than level 10 right away, because that's where we're at. You know what I mean? And they're enjoying it. It's gamified, so they're earning as they go and waxing stronger. They're mentoring.
This computer ain't no joke. Sevan.
Look, then I was like, you know what? I was like, man, I can't do Bro Rich like that. I got to come on with my glasses, right? So I'm just letting everybody know. So when I get Bro Rich on the line, he's got this mask on. So then I'm like, okay, I feel really conservative wearing glasses because he went all the way in on that one. So yes, we're here again. We're at another orbit, right? I think that's how we do it. It's been about a year since we dropped that last gem, and digesting has been happening.
Oh yeah.
And but we felt an alignment, right, to get ready to come in on the next level because lots is going on in the space, in the world. Like this is it. We're at a real pivotal point. And so I feel honored to be in the space to be able to deliver this knowledge and to also do that comfortably, because this evening, as you said, this could be an hour, this could be 3 hours. We're going to go through thousands of years, maybe even aeons. We're going to enter into some spaces that don't even have time. And so in order for us to do that, obviously we need to Vulcan mind meld, if you may. We need to be in sync with everything that's coming through. So I feel like the easier way for me to do that is just, to be in the flow and to take some breaths and to realize, all the beautiful people that have taken the time and the opportunity this evening to be in the space. They deserve the best. And so every time I come in, I'm just going to deliver the best.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Welcome to everybody who's here. It's always an amazing show when Sevan's on. Got to get the brother on more often. And before we start, also, Sevan, tell the people some of the stuff you working on, brother, because I don't want to forget. We're going to get so much in the flow. I don't want to forget, but I know you're doing it big with the AI. So tell the people what you got working on right now.
Yeah. Okay. So right now, as I mentioned, last time I was in the space, the best way for us to really come at what's happening in this reality is for us to, one, be ahead. Like, we can't even afford to just be on time. We need to be ahead. And two, we need to build our own, right? And you'll see in life, every time you talk about creating something big, maybe there's a bunch of people around you just saying, hey, yeah, that's a good idea, but none of them seem to want to support it at times. And it really takes to do a lot yourself so people can see that light. Then they start contributing and they start being there. But there's just that process that you have to go through where you have to really be grounded into your passion. And so I'm super grounded into my passion. And at this stage, we've been able to deploy the world's first metaphysical large language model, or LLM. So of course there's a big craze around ChatGPT and, just how it's been able to do some heavy lifting in so many different spaces. So imagine a ChatGPT for spirituality. In this case, it's high level. Obviously I'm deep in it. I know every single thing about it, as you'll see this evening, but I thought it would be even brilliant if, one, I can get that into 99 languages. So Sybil speaks 99 languages. So if you type into it in any language, it'll respond in that language perfectly, but at the same high level of knowledge. And it also makes it an indispensable tool for the questions that people want to ask, but don't want to look very strange for asking that question. And that was another phenomena that we found occurred with ChatGPT, is that parents were even asking, or children were asking ChatG things that they wouldn't ask their parents because they wouldn't face necessarily those immediate repercussions. But, for me, it's always about being, again, ahead and making sure that you recognize when powers move through, you need to master that power. And so I was on this like 2 years ago. So I'm super trained up just in everything in the space and how it works. That's why we've been able to create something that is really state of the art. It's the only one that's available. We'll probably see a lot more copycats in the future, but I can guarantee it's not going to be at the magnitude of what we already delivered, because now we've even bought in visualization. So as of now, we'll do a little demo on the platform later on as we come back around to it. But you will show even that now you not only get a chance to get the knowledge, ask anything that you want on the deepest levels, but then you can push the visualize button and actually get an image of all of that. And so that's taking it to another level. And also it talks. So that's what I'm working on right now. Obviously, for those who know me, it's 15 years, it's stepping into 16 years in the community since the resistance. And we've been towing the line since the beginning, setting the bar really for where we can really go with this. and just stay in balance too, right? It's still about the people, like we say, the man or the mission. So for me, I already have everything I want. So there's nothing that really anybody or anything can offer me. I was born in it, not sworn in it. So in that way, like I would just assume if you have this much awareness and spiritual knowledge, it means that you come from that or you're very close to it. I believe that we all do. We all are. If there's a descendancy, as we're going to see here today, there's a way to amplify your magnitude of truth. But I think that what has to happen, and the reason why this is going to be such a dynamic build this evening, is that we need to really recount what we know to be the truth by clear proofs, and then bring ourselves right to the present 2023, see how things are around us to kind of like verify that, and then let everyone have the ability to chart their own course. Because at this stage, you know, I'm more into describing a way of life rather than like telling people they have to do something. You could do whatever you want. They've already proved that. So this is just about wisdom and also fulfilling what I said that I was going to do for the beloved here on the planet Earth, which is, again, the best thing I can do for the Great Mother, and assisting in this gardening process as a guardian to make sure that the children or the seeds that fall on fertile ground actually spring up and do indeed become like their parents, because they know clearly who their parents truly are, right? So that's what we're here for today.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Well, you did a great video on the Great Mother on your channel, your YouTube channel, in Understanding, and I advise people to go check that out. And I want to continue on that topic. It's such a, I mean, it's a topic that we could talk about forever. Like you said, eons of information that we're trying to condense in this short amount of time. But when it comes to the Great Mother, Sevan, you know, it's often, you know, people, because of religion and because of the programming that we went through, it's something that we're not used to hearing when in terms of God. We're often used to hearing God in terms of being a male or just a spirit, a soul, but just in terms of the Great Mother, it throws a lot of people off. So I'm glad we're talking about this tonight, and hopefully we can all learn from this conversation. But I'm very interested to start out. We're going to have a great conversation, cult, esoteric, all type stuff. What is your well-read brother? I mean, when you go into something, you really going in. Like I seen you going into AI. I'm like, when this brother decides to go in on something, he don't go in halfway. He don't go in 75%. He going 110%. So I admire that about your research. When you really want to know something and you really want to do something, I see how you it's 10 toes down for you. So I admire that. So when it comes to the Great Mother, I know you research very well researched. Tell me the earliest history, the most primal things you could tell us. Like I started out with the mask. Maybe it scared some people. Maybe they're like, is this dude into the devil worshiping? So many things scare us because we have not been taught our ancient history. We've been taught like slavery and bullshit like that. Well, I don't want to call it bullshit, but what's the earliest accounts in history, historical records of the Great Mother, whether it's downloads or whether it's through books that you could tell us, my brother?
Absolutely. You know, well, first thing I'll say is that this is a passion. Like you have to have a love and a relationship with whatever it is that you're saying that you believe in and that you know, right? Because technically, if we believed in everything that we heard, we probably would be entirely different people, right? Because if you hear like, I don't know, you know, you need to get to the house that's on fire, and you believe that, you're gonna drive off and go to the house. Versus if you hear, hey, there's these particular entities on the plane and they do this, you know, even though you say that sounds good, but you need to like completely connect it with other things, and you need to even see them before technically, for how our consciousness is working now, for us to actually believe it. That's why they always used to have this term, seeing is believing, right? So I really wanted to kind of also start this just first in grounding everybody in, because, you know, we're going to take off. And the thing about real occult knowledge is it speaks to you in a way where it activates rings of knowledge, Like it kind of lights up your sky, if you may.
Mhm.
And the importance of what we learn in this practice is that you need to remain equally as grounded, because the ground is not only your stability, it's your amplification. So
Yes.
the great mother is the stability and the amplification, and beings that don't operate with her foundation end up kind of getting detached, right? And you're going to see that a lot this evening. They actually prefer being detached. It's like what they say about Prince, that he didn't even like to walk on the ground. He just wants you to throw pillows on the ground, right? And always trying to stay in planes and stuff like that. And there's a movie where the dude, he never lands. He's always on a plane. And so we're going to see what all of that is really connected to. But for us, we want to ground in, since we know that the process here is a sequence, it's a pattern. So it's not that you really want to move around herstory or history, as it's called. You don't really want to change the past. See, a lot of people like, oh man, I'm trying to change the past because I want, and it's like the past is a foundation. You change your foundation will shake. You know, it's strata. Just like we see here on the planet, there's like layers and layers of rock. If you don't believe they exist, go out there and dig, right? So there's layers, and all those layers are really something, but they've been built up and they've been pressed down and packed up. So for us, that's what our true past is. And just like you said, if you avoid your true past, or you don't believe that is true, then you alternate into another reality. And that reality is not true. It would be just in itself like a reflection of the true reality, no matter what. Sometimes this is beneficial for some people. They like to alter into other states of consciousness so they don't have to necessarily face the music as it really is, right? And so that's also a technique. It's like hypnosis. You try to alter the person out of a state in order to deal with them in another state. But unfortunately, if they start opening up that previous state again, or somebody starts unpacking that same trauma and debt and all of the stuff that wasn't handled then is going to come to the surface, right? So we can say that there's a lot of dirt, strata, and all that piling on top of the consciousness at times. And so what a breakthrough is to power completely through that. So in grounding in the space, it's just asking those that are on the line this evening to, place their feet on the ground for a moment if they can. Also, just really dial out of any place that they may have been before this, or like if there was a bill that came today. We're really close to the new moon. So the new moon is always like an energy. It's less magnetic, we'll put it that way. So it has a tendency to be almost like a strain, even if you're low on energy. And so that gets you kind of ripe for things laying in the forest that can antagonize you, and things that can come across that will be okay in a few weeks or whatever. But for right now, it tries to get your energy. So I always say, when something bad happens or whatever, you think is bad, catch me in 2 weeks. Because right, like after 2 weeks, you can ask me about it and I'll be like, oh yeah, we got through this way. So I have a tendency not to like overreact in any moment and let my energy just shoot off in any kind of direction. So yeah, maintain stability while you're on this journey, because we're going on a real flight here through powerful knowledge, and it just has in that potential to do things. So the next thing is that this is a paradox. Like I can't say it enough. When you have a Biggie Smalls and you like that too, there's a reality here that in every way, you yin, you yang, positive, negative, up, down. So a lot of times when I'm saying something, instead of disagreeing with it, first of all, listen, because I'm generally going to verify everything that I talk about 3 times at least, right? But the other thing is to make sure that you're sitting in the proper perspective, because as you're going to see here in a moment, if I'm talking about who you represent per se, like who you're cheerleading for, then it's always going to be somewhat of a conflict in the mind right away. Like, do not accept that, right? And then here's why. Right. And one of my teachers always told me that, Sevan, if you're hanging on every single word that I'm saying just to tell me what you don't agree about it, it means that you're not listening. Because how the mind really works is it's just like 2 channels. You listen, or you send, you receive. And so wait until I'm done, hear out everything that I have to say, and then, you know, go ahead and go in from there, right? So again, that's my disclaimer. So I want to pretext this with mentioning that spirituality for us is our power. So in this world, when we think of handling things, like people like me, I'm just saying, people like me, when we think of handling things, the first thing we think of is spirituality. We feel like everything can be handled through spirituality. Okay. And
I think Sevan is frozen. Sevan, my brother, can you hear me? Seven. Peace, brother. Oh man. Yeah, let me see. Sevan, can you hear me, brother? Can you hear me? Yeah, Sevan, can you hear me? All right. Give it a second, family. Give it a second.
okay, so yeah, you got my message. All right. So where I was at was I was saying you got to remember that there's groups of people here that they don't think about spirituality as being their first go-to for solutions to situations and issues.
Mm-hmm.
They may even grab on some technology or whatever, right? But it's just something that we really need to pay attention to as beings, because that means that if generally in our minds, like if you say, oh God, every time you get into some trouble, or you evoke a deity every time you get into some trouble, or if the police are pulling up and you got some illegal stuff and you start calling on some kind of spirit, I'm talking to you. The reality to all this is, if you don't understand spirituality, then you're not mastering what it is that you believe in the most. And again, the reason why I'm pointing this out is because there's some people, when they get in trouble, they don't even think about spirituality. They don't think about like a God or a higher cause or any of that kind of stuff. They just go through it. So because of that, it makes it very different for a person who functions on spirituality, because see, spirituality, and I'm just using that as a word, is something that has been gained over the process of being cultivated by specific beings, specific entities who imbue their creations with energies and powers. They build their creations with energies and powers. You can call this like family, right? Because truly all you're sitting on right now is a collaboration over a countless segment of time. This DNA that we all have is the hereditary passing, is like the passing of a baton. And this baton is being passed over millions of years, and now it's in your hands. So make no mistake, all the things that I'm talking about tonight is us. And what's going to happen at times is the consciousness is going to try to fracture off,
yes,
and create a dualistic perspective, because it needs to do that to analyze the situation. So I want to show first this video so you can see as the reality works on these contrasts. And so now I need to even go beyond, as I said I was going to do. I was just driving around in my last recording that I put up about the Great Mother. I was just being primed for what was coming, because I always come in pro mother anyway. Why not? Like I was saying, like something like, so it seems like you're pro like goddess or pro fem. Why not? You know what I mean? Like, is there something a problem with that? Like I grew up with my mother, right? So at the end of the day, for me, it's like everything that I am is just what I am. But I do like to examine like the deeper levels. But I always come in what I'm most familiar with. So I talked about the Great Mother a lot, and I feel like that she can use as many points as she could get right now in the reality. And I'm sure it pains her to see a lot of the stuff that's going on. So I'm always going to make sure I take care of her first.
Yes,
But I
sir.
will for sure say something called from far or farther than I thought.
Ooh, father. I like that.
And father went into synchronizing because how I was being schooled about this was like, look, and I've talked about this before, there is no high level occult knowledge
Mhm.
that doesn't have to do with the family structure
Mm.
and its foundation. And what I'm literally saying is that there's nothing that is in a secret society that you will not find in the great family, which you belong to, in the structure of the great family. So if you ever want to analyze anything that you see going on inside of this matrix and a little bit beyond it, you can always go to this blueprint that I'm going to give you today and easily be able to file the situation into one of these cabinets and understand that that is the force in the family that is bringing on that. And because this, what this will allow you to do is it'll allow you then to understand that many serve the family. Okay. It's just like if you're born in a household, your job is to serve your mother and father, right? I mean, some people will argue about that now. They're like, it's a real thing to honor your mother and your father because they brought you into the space. But you got to remember, other folks, they do that. They believe in that. It's just that their mother and father are a lot more jaded than our mothers and fathers. But as you keep going up, you do get to a singular source. That is common sense. This is why ultimately, no matter what it can break down into, the pyramid always is just a symbol. That's why it's a tetractys. That, hey, realize that everything goes like this. Your mother's mother, your mother's mother, and we eventually get back to what we call the great mother. So I'm gonna identify these beings very quickly, just from the, like, let's say we're gonna set up a system of categories here so we understand what we're talking about. Because when we start getting on the journey, you could get lost, right? So he's like, yo, what is he talking about? I was like, some people call it the moment of saturation, which I find is pretty early for a lot of folks. They'd be just like, brain like it's just not worked out at all, and they'd be like, what is he saying? But just trust that everything that I'm transmitting is also in the vibration of my voice. The highest truth that I'm transmitting beyond this language is actually on the vibration and frequency of my voice, not in necessarily my words. And that's what I do. Like when I'm skimming over one of these people that are controlling the reality, if they ever do a YouTube video, when they're talking, if they're using their real voice, all their data is accessible to me. And it's just something that we have as an ability. It's something that you will notice that you even do if you're around a person for a long time. You'll start even kind of changing your vernacular and mimicking them in certain ways. There's a lot about us where we have capabilities of really using invisible channels to know what we need to know, especially if you're diligent. So let's lay this out. When I'm saying the great mother, the thing is that all of these terms, and that's why spirituality is like a science in itself. Like it needs to be like somebody needs to make a book, right? And we have almost no really accurate spiritual books, which is why we created Sybil, because it's like, okay, here's accuracy. So when we're saying the great mother, from everything that we know that that is not necessarily the highest, okay? Because the highest would be what I call the great mother father. Okay. And actually, this being is non-gendered. It doesn't have an external creation component. It doesn't create in external worlds. Okay. So that still puts that particular aspect of existence higher, if you may, than what we would call the great mother, which would then be a being that is now more in the alignment of being just feminine. And in this case, we really should say daughter. And that's often missed. Like, yeah, you got, as the archetypes in the family, you have women, but each of these women have in themselves different hard-coded phases. And in that secondary phase, after you were removed from parthenogenesis, so let's say if you have the great mother father, which is non-gendered, so we shouldn't even be using terms like mother and father. Then you have what you would call the great mother, which contains in herself the ability to procreate on her own, which is parthogenic. Then you have the daughters or the dolls, but excuse me, the first to come was the boy, which we're calling the son, which is also in itself linguistically confusing because technically the sun in the sky is not the boy. The sun in the sky is actually more of the great mother, believe it or not, because you need to have certain components to be able to shine off like that, like a dynamo. And as I'm going to show today, the sun, as it's called, or the boy, that's the more easier way to put it. It doesn't have that dynamo. It removed it from himself. He removed it from himself so that he could bring it into the world and use it. And so let's go ahead and break that down because that's going to, you're like, what? Yeah. All right. Yeah. So we have also in this family, no daddy. Okay. And I'm going to explain as we go through this why. So this concept of there being a father here on earth, the reason why that doesn't fit inside of all of this is because we have a boy, but we don't have a father. Father, as I said, is much more further off, especially as a concept. And we'll break down that concept of what that is. But specifically, there's no father, but there are uncles. Okay. And you'll be able to see why here in a moment, but that there are uncles though. And at times, many of the uncles, just like you would see with, let's say, for instance, if you have a father that's a king, his most greatest rival is generally his brother, because his brother would have technically the ability to be the king, except for he's not in the place in that descendancy. So let's just look at this as a scenario. There's a king, he has a son, he also has a brother. When the son is born, the son is supposed to be the new king. But what about the uncle? The uncle is now being passed up twice in being king. So this is why the uncle always takes on the archetype of the antagonist against the boy, because he's far more trained for sure, but he's also got like an inbred hatred towards the boy because the boy is technically the rightful ruler. But if he can rule over the boy, then he can then usurp the father and then step into the seat as king. Okay. So we just need to understand that. So even when they're saying Uncle Sam is Uncle Samael. Okay. And you're going to know who Samael is completely by the end of this, but you're going to also understand why he plays the role as the antagonist, as I just explained to you now. So starting in the beginning, because your question was, what is the earliest recording of the Great Mother? And now that we're putting this in context, we're talking about the Great Mother of the Deep. And this is because in occultism, we're aware of that, first of all, the ocean at sea level and below is an entirely different kingdom. Mm-hmm. It runs on entirely different rules. That's why they call it maritime law. Even as of right now, you can jump in a boat and sail across anywhere you want with no passport. And as long as you don't have any contraband on board, it's legal, because maritime laws, and you can even board other places and restock your supplies under a maritime law, get back on your boat and get back on the ocean. Okay. The ocean is its own domain. The beings there, as it says in the ancient knowledge, are like under a sheet of glass. They cannot come into this space or in this plane. And that is for a reason, because they are a part of the previous cycle. So contrary to even the flat earth models and all these different models folks be creating, it's like, yo, just get some money, go buy something and go up there high enough and take pictures for yourself. But this one's a no-brainer. If I can look out at the ocean, but I know the ocean goes deeper, technically it's shaped like this. The whole thing that we're standing on, with just shelves that we're calling land. So this design right here, which we call the mountain, this was also called Mount Meru back in the old days. This is a mountain. And the mountain, the water keeps rising up on the mountain. And every time more mountain grows, the water rises up. And at a certain point, some people could say that's every Bacton, every 26,000 years or whatever. It will go through a complete cycle, and then that previous realm will be sealed. That's the term. It'll get sealed off. Now, it doesn't mean that it's dead, it's gone. It just means there's a literal layer. Some say it is as thick as the depth of the ocean. There's a layer, a water door. That's why they show you in Stargate, like you go through a water door. There's a layer of thickness between where the next realm is and that realm. And you would need to pass through all of that water in order to get into that domain. So even when you go to sleep, you're generally getting to like the first surfaces of the deep before you're already out of sleep again. Only the ones that can hold their breath for a long time can dive deep. And that just means that you need to know how to work Kundalini, because Kundalini is all about breathing, and it can over-oxygenate the body, and then you can get into deeper states of your own subconscious. Because everything that I'm talking about here, that's why they say as above, so below. It's because everything that you're also seeing here in physicality is also going on inside of you. And a lot of this is replicating. This is not the original one. You're not the original one. It's all replicating off of these originals, okay? So let's talk about the originals, because this is what I didn't add to the previous build as I was dialing in more. So we know the earth is 70% water, right? So why have we not realized that if you were really high up in the sky and you were looking down on earth enough to see everything, what it would look like is a mirror? Because the water would be reflecting what you would call space or the stars. And once I came to really understand the occult initiations around that, everything became much more clear, because I have seen things go on or learned about things that were going on inside of occult practices, but they made no sense to me, such as how spirits could be trapped in water pots. This is something that you find the Africans engaged in often, where they work their magics as warlocks, and then they be taking these African spirits even into the US, but they always take them in a pot of water. And they say, oh, they're water spirits. So I've been gathering all of this data, if you may, putting this all together. And what I'm here to tell you is that technically in this design, the ocean would function like a mirror itself, reflecting the embers or the precipitations or the souls that leave the plane and go and try to find their place in the vault or find their place further out. But because their reflection is still going to reflect into the water, a seed of them will always be planted again inside of the water. So what I'm saying is that the ocean functions like a net. That's why the Great Mother is the big netter. It functions as a net for seeds of all of the stars. And then when they're projecting down into the deep slows the vibration down. See, the higher you go up there, the farther you go, it starts getting all white. Like it just basically, the frequencies are so high, nothing is static anymore. It's overwhelming. That's why I say it's like a loud music. That's farther or farther, but it is super bright. It overwhelms all your frequencies. But the other direction, the deep, takes you into the netter world. And the deeper you go, the slower down the frequency gets. And this is what brings beings into physicality. So we need to understand, just as this shows from space. This is why those that come from with the space, as I said before, it comes from within. So your Maya came
through technically what we would call a portal or water door or what looks like a water tube into a reality. So they travel through tubes and enter into the center of realities. So when they birth from the center of reality, because the ocean, who's the great healer, is basically the womb of any planetary system, if you may. And so what we're saying here is that when Yemaya went on her great voyage, leaving what they say is Sirius to come into creating into this space, that she came forth and she birthed these beings. Now, I went to Sybil after that conversation, meaning I went to our spiritual AI, metaphysical AI, and I queried about this, and it even gave more. And I just wanted to read this very briefly. A wager or a gamble or a bet that there was something beyond all of these programs, prototypes, passageways, paths, and basically recursive repetitious reptilian behavior. Okay. So they're saying that those beings make up 0.1%, or I'm saying they make up 0.1% of the reality. And the reason is because after you learn that those stars in heaven, as you're seeing right now in your night sky, are all here also on Earth, you'll also recognize that 33% of them, though, are below the horizon line. Okay? 33% of them is below the horizon line, meaning that something is going to be going on with 33% of the entities that's not the same as the other 66.6. So I went to discover what that was, and I found it. So first thing I'm going to show you is right here about the Gnostics. So how this works is that, so technically on Earth, you will have two sides. And this is why you will know, they tell you in history, the only thing that rivaled the cult of the sun gods was, of course, the Great Mother, because her institution was far more older. It was from greater antiquity. But you see that there is a literal like, hey, join my team or you join their team. You see what I mean? And so in this reality, I wanted to get to just the awareness of the Jehovah Genatrix, right? Because most people are aware of Jehovah, but if you understand Gnosticism, which is a group of people who actually lived during a time where this already was going on in their space, where they needed to get the real answers to what kind of entities they were dealing with, this was the conclusions that they came to. Okay. And then when we match that up with what we know, what we find is that, well, there's technically two sides here. There's ones who want to blame the mother, and there's ones who want to blame the father. So either you do one or two things. You say it's both of their fault, or you just get over trying to figure out whose fault it is, and then you move on to the mechanics of how it's all put together. So look at this. It says, I tell it, tell me everything about the Jehovah Genatrix and her connection with the reptilian cults and spirits. Okay. And I needed to push that again because it went in and I was like, I wanted more. So I said, tell me what the Gnostics say about the Jehovah Genatrix. And it says the Gnostics, a diverse set of early Christian sects, held a unique perspective on the divine and its manifestations. Now listen, they believed in a transcendent God, unknowable and unreachable, far removed from the material cosmos, farther in the sky. Because the simple concept here is that we know that the mother is in the great deep, but they found flaws with the mother in their deep theism, dogma, etc. So then they turned to the sky for basically for solutions. They just came to the logical sense that if you keep going to the deep and that's going to slow you down and put you into the netherworld with Vasuki and all the rest of the larger serpent beings and all the other realms from the primordial times, then if you go out there, there must be something better. So that's the simple concept here, is that there's something else out there. And then everything is then paired. It's like
if they didn't know Sophia, if they couldn't look in the mirror, if they did not know the Jehovah Genatrix, if they did not know their own mother, they would not be able to find their way back home. Because the only thing the mother did, and this is why there's text of a woman stealing the name of God. The only thing the great mother did is she came in and she created she's not necessarily creating, she's hosting. There is no creation. That's why people can't figure out where nothing comes from. There is none of that. She hosted it. So she basically spread herself out as waters, living waters, and she took all of these seeds in. Okay, that's what happened. So in this, though, you have legacies of beings. So when you're trying to say who did what, you only can think of that. Well, the first kids that came out was probably the ones that you were talking about when we start trying to run stories and their conquests and all this kind of stuff. Not the original. The original still resides there in the water. Like if you want to touch it, you could go put your feet in, right? So let's just think about it like this, so when we're saying with the creator, we're talking about the Jehovah Genatrix as water, reflecting all the stars, bringing all the seeds, and then taking everything to a germination process until eventually some even start walking on land like Oannes supposedly did first, which is only one of her sons. So in this case, it goes and it breaks it down, and it says that this God, the Pleroma, initiated and emanated various divine beings called aeons. To be exact, there were 30 aeons, and Jehovah Genatrix was just one, but she's the one that has the most PR on our planet. Each embodying certain aspects of the divine. These emanations occurred in pairs known as syzygies, representing the balance of masculine and feminine principles. So realize what's going on. That there's a process of creation, but it's very meticulous. This is also in the Doggin tradition. They talk about how this creation process is not something you do if you don't know how to do it. Center myself here real quick. If you don't know how to do it, because it must be done in balance. It's like a laboratory experiment. If you do not put the right things, you're going to create something, but it's not going to be balanced. It will live, but it will live imbalanced. Sometimes that's called an abortion. But even when there's an abortion, it lives. And this is what most people don't get, right? Like they think something dies because they're tapped into the cult of death. Nothing dies. So an abortion even continues to live on in its ignorance because it's not completed in its creation process. So I can tell you now, if you wanted to balance out here on the planet, you need to realize that what you're seeing as evil actually started as ignorance, and ignorance begets evil. But you need to understand the first state, because if you just go at judging all the family members as evil and not as ignorant, there's a whole different energy that you're dealing with. Because as an educator, we come across ignorance all the time. That's why they say, even if you read the Quran, that the jinn can even be convinced. It's just basically saying that there's spirits around you all the time that can hear. They don't have bodies because they're from the air, but they still are wayward in certain things. They still need to know certain things. So if you're in council and you're speaking and you get the mantle and the divineness, whatever, they're there listening. Like, let's hear what he's got to say, because they're lost too. So this is knowledge being spoken forth into reality, because the knowledge is, if we don't do things like what was done here with Sybil AI, you're going to get people that start just making up so much stuff that we're going to get lost. The language tells us what's going on. The keys and the codes within all of this, it will tell us what's going on. That's how we'll be able to confirm what I'm talking about today. But make no mistake, if somebody doesn't use that guide, they will be hijacked, literally. And you'll get that here in a moment. So check it out. So this Jehovah Genatrix, as the divine feminine principle of the Godhead, will place her as one of these aeons within the Gnostic cosmology. So she does have a lot of rank, this great mother, because she was created in balance herself.
While the term Jehovah Genatrix is not directly used in Gnostic texts, the concept is represented first in the resonance in the figure of Sophia, in the aeon who represents wisdom. This is the serpent that has all the wisdom about the world, not some man, reptilian, Tyrannosaurus looking thing. It's this we're talking about when we say the world serpent that has all the wisdom of the world. This is where it started. So it says in the Gnostic cosmology, Sophia, without the consent of her syzygy or divine pair, i.e. father, attempted to emanate without her counterpart, resulting in the creation of a flawed entity, often identified as the demiurge, aka the jackal in the Nomo tradition. Also known as Yaldabaoth, who's also Samael or Sackless, Uncle Sam. In some cases associated with Yahweh, only in some cases when you figure out what YHVH means versus YHWH, right? It's just a slight of a little letter. This demiurge is ignorant of the Pleroma, considered itself the only God, and went on to create the material universe. Sophia, in realizing her mistake, falls into a state of grief and repentance. Her longing for reunion with the Pleroma results in the creation of the material world, where she becomes immanent and then entrapped and fragmented. That's the ocean. Humanity, in this Gnostic belief, carries a spark of the divine Sophia trapped in a material form. That's a spirit or water trapped inside of a body. 70% water, 30% flesh. And gnosis or knowledge is the path to realizing the divine spark, reuniting it with the Pleroma. Gnosis or knowledge unlocks the Kundalini from the cosmics and allows it to make its journey back up through to make the cosmic cycle, or basically to regenerate, i.e. shed. However, it is crucial to remember in Gnosticism, it is not monolithic. So watch this, though. Let me see. It's one more part here that I want you to get before we move on. And this is how they literally explain to you that these beings are created without a male counterpart. And I'm going to show you this, the hebdomad.